name is Sean Theuri. I'm originally from Kenya, but I also grew up in between Kenya and the US, so I'm like kind of in between both. Also an American citizen. I'm currently studying computer science at Caltech, and yeah, I think that's a bit of my background and a bit about me. When I was applying to universities at first, Caltech was one of the top STEM schools. I mean, it has the most Nobel laureates in at least STEM fields. And so that's one of the reasons I mainly applied to CS at Caltech. And I applied as a CS major because I was interested in studying computer science at the time. I hadn't yet had much experience, as much exposure as I have currently, but through my Caltech education, I've gotten more exposure, and it was just something that I was interested in at the time, especially seeing, because it was around like 2021, 22, seeing a lot of startups coming up and seeing how CS is like really impactful, and impact is something I wanted to do in my career, as not just like academically, but outside of the classroom. Apart from like the transcripts and grades, from what they mentioned when my offer letter to join Caltech, it was, I guess, my desire to actually not just learn, but also learn to actually do things and make a difference in other people's lives. And that was something that they emphasized in my offer letter. One of the essays I wrote about wanting to do that, that was something that I guess stood out to the admissions committee. Apart from like having the basic grade requirements, yeah, that was something that they really liked. And yeah, I think that's what stood out most. One misconception that people, I think, have about Caltech is it's completely nerdy, I think, and I don't think that's completely true. There's definitely facets or pockets of it that are nerdy or something like that, but I think there's also a lot of social people here, a lot of people from different backgrounds and who generally are like very outgoing. And a misconception about studying CS at Caltech, probably I guess not many people really know that CS was a big thing at Caltech, because I guess the biggest thing was the Jet Propulsion Lab in aerospace. So that it is like the biggest major is something that's not really known unless you actually look into it. So I would say that's maybe a big misconception that some people have. My favorite part about studying computer science is probably the code. I would say it's the nicer part that you don't have to like put too much effort into. You can look up syntax and different things like that. My least favorite part would probably be when you have to do the math and like actually maybe prove an algorithm or something like that. So that, I would say, those are my favorite and least favorite parts. It was a advanced CS class taught by a professor called Georgia, and it was on large language models and computer vision. And yeah, it was very interesting and gave me a lot of insight, not only just from like reading papers to actually implementing some of these things. It gave me a lot of knowledge and insight into like the actual field of machine learning, not just like what's currently happening from the complete beginnings up until where we are today. And a really true appreciation for why things happen and decisions that were made, and a deeper understanding. And it's why, like, in my next steps in my career, I'm aiming to progress and pursue more machine learning. I've done research at Caltech. Currently, I'm doing some research this semester as well in nanorobotics. And yeah, it's been very interesting, and I'm enjoying the work I'm doing. I think it's very insightful as well, and it's a good opportunity that you don't get at most colleges to like really pursue research alongside your studies, especially at an undergrad level. I had like one internship previously at the tech transfer office at Caltech, where we were working on startups and applying our knowledge in CS to like actually make a product and then take it to market. And we were working with like machine learning and web development, and that was my previous experience. And upcoming, I do have another internship at Apple for machine learning. Honestly, it was I think they kind of just had submitted my application a while back, and they reached out after a while, and I don't know, I wasn't really aware that they were going to reach out. And we did an interview, and One thing that I think stood out in their interview process was they weren't so much of testing, like, can you spit out a lead code question compared to other interviews I've done. They were more testing your knowledge. So there was a lot of questions about just seeing if you actually know what you're saying. And that was something that was even mentioned, like, by my interviewer, that they care more about whether you actually know what to do and have the actual theory to carry out the job. Because at the end of the day, code is like, you can search up the syntax, and with LLMs these days, you can just get the, code itself. But if you actually understand the theory and are able to actually, like, use those tools to actually, like, make a difference or actually effectively solve problems, that's what they cared more about. So, yeah, that was something that stood out. There was, but it was, like, really just a simple pandas code to query and get, like, a small section of a table and output it. So that was the coding into section. Caltech really prepared me in the sense that I think it gives you a really good CS education, and the things that are taught are really relevant to what you're going to do in industry or, like, going to actually apply. And so most of the questions I was asked were not just in this interview, all the other interviews were just things that I've been taught at some point in time, or that I could, if I'm just saying, like, general questions, not lead code aside, just general questions you would have gotten if you just went to class. Probably my research and also my previous internship experience, as well as the personal projects I've done, because I did also a lot of personal projects in machine learning and robotics as well, so, and web development. So there was a lot of it showed a lot of interest on my side in the field, as well as some background and experience apart from, like, grades aside. And the courses I've taken and the languages I was proficient in, I think those were the biggest other things that were on my resume that stood out. One of them was kind of making an LLM compiler, where we take natural language queries and then we converted them to a intermediary language, which we were mapping with the compiler to SQL to retrieve data and then create visualizations. So it was meant to act as like an alternative to Tableau, kind of, where you just type in, if you have a data set, like, you give in your CSV and then you type in, I want to visualize the trend in, or like the rate of change of, like, let's say I'm selling, your data set is like how many potatoes you sold in like the past 30 days. And then you wanted to see like the total or rate of increase, or like the amount of potatoes sold every day. Visualize that in a graph as a bar chart, and you type that in as a query. The LLM would convert that to the language, and then that language, since it was very expressive, would then allow us to like map it to SQL easier, and then retrieve the data easier and create the visualization. So then it worked well. And some of the projects was like making an LLM myself from kind of scratch, just training it as well. And another game, one was a project we did in a class at Caltech, CS3, which was like a physics-based game engine, which was multiplayer. And we made that. That was also another project on my resume. And some robotics that I had done previously, where working with like a kind of headset that would basically read your brain waves and would then coordinate the waves that your brain is emitting at the time with a robotic arm to control the arm, basically. Currently, my future goals, in the next 4 years, is to work for some time, gain some experience. After that, probably, I've always wanted to do startups, so probably something along those lines. But also maybe in the process of getting another degree, like a master's or something like that. And just generally trying to eventually transition to doing a startup, because I'd eventually want to use the knowledge I have to actually do something meaningful. So